Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Terrace Talk. A very festive looking Terrace Talk as well for the start of what is an intense and busy festive schedule. The best thing about this time of year, it starts for Norwich City on Friday against Charlton Athletic at Carrow Road on Boxing Day. The first of 4 games in 10 days that they hope will transform their season. I'm delighted to be joined by Rich Cawley, who's going to give us some excellent insight on all things Charlton Athletic. Rich, how are you and how excited? I mean, we're recording this on Christmas Eve and it'll be out on Christmas Eve, so that's all good. So we can look ahead to Christmas. How excited are you for the big day?
Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah, it's always a bit of a manic time, isn't it? And getting everything ready. Yeah, my kids are a little bit older now, so it's not quite the levels of excitement have dialed down a little bit over the years, but it's still a good time. And not much of a rest before we're back into it with the football journalist, smallest violin playing ever, but obviously Boxing Day is for other people to enjoy. People talk about footballers not getting proper Christmas Day. We don't get Boxing Day.
No, we don't. And yeah, like you say, the world's smallest violin for us there, I think, on that. Right, let's talk Charlton then. I mean, obviously, first year back in the Championship. Just give us kind of a general overview of how things have gone so far this season.
Yeah, well, they've started the season. When you look at it, I guess you can break it into a couple of blocks. Really, they started the season really well. You could maybe argue a bit of momentum off the back of what they did, like winning the League One playoffs. They obviously were really strong in the second half of last season. They then had a real dip, sort of early November, right through to it was probably a bit more than a month, where they lost 5 games in a row in the Championship. And I mean, I was talking to Nathan Jones yesterday as part of his pre-match press, and he said he couldn't remember a time he'd lost 5 as a manager before, and he didn't expect to with the group of players he had. There have been reasons, that you would look at for that. They've had a number of injuries which have affected them, but then heading into the Norwich game, they've kind of steadied the ship, as it were. They got a good result at Birmingham City. Birmingham have got an excellent home record, and Charlton, particularly in the second half, I thought played pretty well there. And then finally found a way through against Oxford in what was the start of a really big run of games. I mean, if you look at Charlton's fixtures, they've beaten Oxford, they've got Norwich obviously on Boxing Day, and then they've got Portsmouth on the Monday on the 29th of December. So 3 teams below them in the table. It's so important they get some results in these matches, and they've kicked it off with a win, which is a good sign.
And it's difficult, isn't it? And Norwich have found this as well recently. When you get on those runs of defeats, whether you're newly promoted or whether you've been in the league for a long time, that momentum, like it is winning in this league, it can be very difficult to break. So that kind of stabilising that form, arresting that run must have been so important for, as you say, ahead of what is a really big run of fixtures for Charlton.
Yeah, and a lot of the games, I mean, you maybe could argue that a lot of games in the Championship generally are fine margins, but particularly with Charlton, they're not prolific goal scorers. And so, the key for them is keeping clean sheets. They kept a club record last season. This season as well, they're right up there if you look at the amount of shutouts that Thomas Kaminski's got. One of the things that was a little bit alarming was that after they lost to Wrexham at the start of November, they then played Southampton at home and lost 5-1, and there was a blitz of 4 goals in 8 minutes in the first half that Southampton scored, and the way that they cut through Charlton was alarming because we hadn't really seen that before. And Charlton did pull a goal back, but it was absolutely the smallest of smallest consolations, really. And what looked to happen then was that when Charlton pressed, and they will be brave and they will go out and sort of hunt teams. Maybe personnel was a factor in this, but they just got played through or around way too easily. So there were some, when you consider how good they've been defensively, they conceded 5 at home to Southampton. They were coupled down really early on at Stoke in the following match, lost 3-0, which wouldn't have done confidence levels any good. Slightly improved performance, but it wasn't improved performance at Coventry. They took the lead but lost 3-1. But at certain points, some of the top sides, with the way that they can move the ball, Charlton have found it difficult. Even the Middlesbrough game earlier in December, they lost 2-1 at home. But really, Middlesbrough in that first half exploited space so well. But they've definitely got a little bit back to where they they were before. I'm not saying they're quite at the level they were at the beginning of the season, but Nathan Jones continually talks about the injuries that they've got and that they're big for them at this moment in time.
I mean, what is the mood? Because, like you say, they've just come out of a run of 5 straight defeats. It's bound to affect any kind of fan base and any, the mood around any sort of football club at any stage in any league. But I mean, you look at the league table; they're still 8 points away from the relegation zone. Is there a sense of they're content with where they are from a fan base perspective, or is there a fear that maybe they could get dragged into it a little bit?
I think there was a bit of concern probably before the Oxford game, but then a lot of the mood of, I think, supporters generally is that, you know, we're all afflicted with it, is that you are kind of, your mood is quite set by the last result. So if Charlton had lost to Oxford, that would have really sucked them in. Like you say, there's a pretty decent gap to the relegation zone. Charlton's goal difference is better than the sides down there. It's not something that couldn't change if they suffered a few heavy losses, but you would think that their goal difference would be probably better. So that's another factor to throw into it. It's almost worth another point. I think the fans, I don't think fans are super concerned about them getting dragged in at the moment. They probably were on the back of that run of losses. In terms of whether fans expected more this season, I think most people would just say, you know, first season up, you've just got to consolidate. Charlton had 5 years back in League One. It was depressing as hell having a big club at that level that, you know, the ground was so empty, you know, just there wasn't the same kind of atmosphere that we had certainly in the opening weeks of the season at the Valley and at the end of the season for the playoffs. So I think that just staying up is absolutely fine. Nathan Jones, the way he talks, he hasn't publicly, and I've asked him a couple of times, he hasn't publicly said we would expect to finish here. He talks about having bold ambitions and talks about looking to do far more than survive, but he hasn't actually put a target on that. And what was quite interesting was I spoke to Gary Rowett from a website before the Oxford game. Obviously, Gary's subsequently been sacked by Oxford. And I said to him, like, is fourth from bottom, is that the target? And he said, as a manager, if you set that, it gives players an excuse. It gives players a reason to sort of think, okay, we're doing okay. So he said, as a manager, you're mindful of not doing that. So Nathan Jones definitely hasn't set a target of fourth from bottom. I think he'd be happy with that. But after the start of the season, I mean, there were people thinking they could have a shout at the playoffs, which I think would have been that would be a huge achievement. You know, when you've still got quite a nucleus of a League One squad. You're just coming up, and Charlton are in the bottom. Yeah, if you split the division spenders into 4 sections, Charlton will be in that bottom section along with the likes of Oxford and Portsmouth.
And I mean, the thing is, you look at that run of defeats that we speak about. You look at the teams in there. I mean, Wrexham, who have, again, they've come up, but that was marginal. Southampton, like you said, I think most people expect to be towards the top end of the table, even though their season maybe hasn't gone how people would have hoped. Stoke, who have had, I know they've dipped a little bit subsequently, but they've had a really good start to the season. Coventry, who are obviously running away with it, and Middlesbrough as well, who are in the top 2. So actually, contextually, it's maybe not as bad as it looks on paper or sounds when you say 5 straight defeats, given the teams that are in that run.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, it's always about timing, isn't it, in football? And as a Fulham fan, I'm always like looking at teams and thinking, oh, they're coming up. Have they got any injuries? Oh, the manager's under pressure. That's good. And because, you know, it does play into things. And the problem that Charlton had in that period was Tondo Ecker had just come in at Southampton. I think they got that sort of new manager stroke head coach bounce. The Stoke loss saw Thomas's first goal after about 2 or 3 minutes. It's a cross from the left-hand side that sails over Thomas Kaminski. I mean, it looks an incredible goal, but it is absolutely a cross. Kaminski with a mistake for the second where the ball goes under him from another cross from Thomas that slips under his body. And as you said rightly, Stoke were going really well at that point. So it's timings and then misfortune. Coventry, well, they were doing what they were doing, you know, prolific goal scorers. And the Middlesbrough game, again, new manager going in there. And I think that was his 3rd straight win that he'd managed to get on in a row. And they looked, you know, like a side that were really enjoying playing under him. So, as you say, when you put some context on it, they were difficult matches. And you know, this run is going to shape a bit more where Charlton are at. I mean, Norwich, I've seen some of the highlights and stuff. They look like they are beginning to show signs of stirring into life. But you've got Portsmouth away, then you've got Coventry at home on New Year's Day, but then it's Blackburn away, who are a little bit inconsistent with the way that they have performed this season. So there are some opportunities for Charlton to get some decent points on the board. I think as long as they don't get pulled too down into it, as long as you've got that 8 point gap or you've got a decent gap, the pressure isn't quite on you the way that it is on those teams down there. That's the key thing, trying to maintain a gap.
We've got to talk about Nathan Jones and the job that he's done at Charlton. Like you say, they were languishing in League One for a period of time, and he himself found himself at a bit of a low ebb in terms of his career. Did a marvellous job over 2 spells at Luton, but after that Southampton spell, I think probably in wider football, and other managers, maybe even a Russell Martin, who obviously has a lot of Norwich connections at the moment, find themselves here, was almost seen as a little bit of a joke figure, wasn't he, after that Southampton gig? And I think he's proven himself again to be a very astute coach at Charlton. Talk to us about the job that he's done there.
Yeah, the Charlton fans love him. And one of the things that I think is important with Charlton over the years, having covered the club as long as I have, is that the managers that seem to connect with the fans, sort of maybe understandably to a degree, are ones that have had a connection with the with the club. So, you're talking about Chris Powell, you're talking about Lee Bowyer, Johnny Jackson. In the case of Nathan Jones, he actually started his coaching career at Charlton. He went from being might be a player coach at Yeovil, and he came in as under 21 boss and then left for Brighton and subsequently had the managerial post that he had. But one of the things that's really interesting is when he came in, the fans instantly took to him. He instantly had their support, and not all the managers that have been at Charlton have had that by any way stretch of the imagination. People like Michael Appleton wasn't popular. Ben Garner never really got the fans on side. And so when you look at it, that was so important. But the thing that Nathan Jones has done, I think, predominantly is, first of all, he has made them defensively very, very solid. And he will talk about the fact that some managers want to win in style and putting together huge passing stats. He's talked about that it's not about him looking good in that respect. He just wants his teams to win football matches by whatever means necessary. And to be fair, some of that is, very much them being, Nathan Jones says it all the time, front-footed, aggressive. They will go out, they will press, they will try and make games quite messy, they will play off second balls, all these things that kind of are ingredients in his side. But he had moments of adversity. Last season, I think it was Bristol Rovers away that they lost, and there was a bit of pressure coming on top of him. And all of a sudden, they pulled together some big results. They won 5-0 at Northampton. It was probably around this sort of time of the year, off the top of my head. I haven't got the exact fixture schedule in front of me. And from there, all of a sudden, things began to click. And from that point onwards, second half of the season, they were so strong. They played so well, didn't really concede goals. Matty Gordon scored plenty of goals for them. He's been a huge miss. He hasn't played since the League One playoff final. And the fans love him. People will talk about some of the stuff that there's always this suggestion that he triggers every single other fan base with his celebrations and stuff like that. But dealing with him week to week at the press conference and stuff like that, I can only say that he's fairly quiet. He's affable. There's not any. I think the Nathan Jones that's kind of caricatured isn't the Nathan Jones that certainly other people would see. But when the game's on, I think he's absolutely in it. He loves it. It's all about emotion, and sometimes it spills over in various ways.
Yeah, I think you're right, but who can dispute what he's done at Championship level with Luton, and hopefully now he can replicate that with Charlton. A couple of players that I wanted to ask you about with Norwich City connections. Obviously, we spoke earlier in the season about dear old Onel, who's very popular. I'm right in saying he's got an injury, hasn't he? So, is it fair to say he's going to miss this Carrow Road return?
Yeah, I think it's probably likely. Nathan Jones is super secretive on team news. So if Onel Hernandez was coming back, there would be no inkling of it from him before the game. Onel hasn't probably played the position that I think he wanted to play. He's tended to play either right wing back or more recently a left wing back. It's not his natural position. You would say that teams have identified that and exploited it at times, but yeah, he's been missing for a bit. Nathan hasn't even actually specified what the injury is, but I would think that it's unlikely that he will be involved. Rob Apter played at left wing back on against Oxford and did well in that position. He's seen as quite an attacking wing back, which is why Nathan hasn't always played him. He quite likes to have the bounce of a more defensive one on the other side. But I think there's a fairly high likelihood it would be Rob Apter who would start. But I mean, by what I know, Anel Hernandez, his affection for Norwich, I'm pretty sure it means that he will be at the game. I would be very surprised if he wasn't.
Yeah, me too. I'd certainly be surprised if he wasn't there. The other one I wanted to ask you about was Sonny Carey, who hasn't played. Well, he did as a youngster, but more known for Kings Lynn in these parts, and had a very good spell there. And obviously, has forged an excellent career for himself subsequently. Norwich fan, we saw him score at Portman Road earlier in the season, which went down very well with those of a yellow and green persuasion. I mean, talk to us about him and the impact he's had, because it certainly looks like he's enjoying an impressive season at the Valley.
Yeah, early on, in particular, when you're looking at sort of early contenders for sort of player of the season, Sonny Carey was right up there. He had a really good spell where he plays that. I mean, Nathan has played him in a couple of different positions. Actually, he played him predominantly as the attacking midfielder. So we'll have a couple of players that are holding. That earlier in the season was Connor Coventry and Greg Doherty. As it's gone along, at times Sonny has played more as another. Like a number 8 midfielder. He is obviously best in the position where he gets forward and breaks forward. I think Charlton's dip in form, where they were on the losing streak, coincided with Sonny being fairly ineffectual, but he wasn't the only one in that regard. And what I think was interesting was, particularly in the Oxford match at the weekend, I thought he showed signs of being a little bit back to what he was doing before, breaking forward with the ball. He had he set up Isaac Alafi for a chance that he should have done better with. And then Sonny himself beat a player on the edge of the box just before half time and sort of drilled a low shot just narrowly wide of the left post. So he's kind of beginning to show signs again that he could get back to that. I mean, as you say, the Ipswich performance, brilliant finish from him, sort of getting forward. And what I like about him is he's hugely positive. He'll always take shots on, a bit like Rob Apter. They're not scared to have a go from distance. And if you do that, sometimes it pays off, as it did for Sonny when he scored a really late winner against West Brom at the Valley, which sparked really nice scenes there as well. So he's definitely been, in terms of the signings Charlton have made, he's definitely been one of the ones that has had a really, really good impact so far.
Final one then, Boxing Day trip to Norfolk. I'm sure it's you guys view it as a very long way. We quite like going to Charlton because of the distance, but we're a million miles away from anywhere. How do you see the game going? It sounds like, from what you've said so far, that Charlton are going to be aggressive and try and get in Norwich's faces from the start.
Yeah, I mean, they don't really play any other way. That's the thing with Nathan. I mean, you could maybe say, oh, when they had injuries in that run, why did they not change their approach? Why did they not just sit deep and look to be difficult to break through? But Nathan didn't do that. And if he didn't do it when he didn't have players back, then he definitely will be going out there to play his normal game, I think, in this match. Indications, not any names being mentioned, but indications that at least a couple more players could be back for this game as well, which would definitely be a boost to them, just to have that little bit more depth on the bench. Charlton will definitely come out and look to do what they normally do. The Birmingham result was a good one. They do rely on their defensive strength. People like Lloyd Jones has been brilliant for them at the back, with blocks and sort of interceptions and winning those aerial duels. So with Charlton, it always tends to be a tight game. I mean, I'm looking at their last couple of matches, 2-1 loss to Middlesbrough, 1-1 draw against Birmingham, 1-0 win against Oxford. When Charlton win, it tends to quite often be by a single goal. I think it'd be tight. I've got a feeling it will be a draw. And I think Charlton would be perfectly happy with the draw, considering the upturn in form under Philippe Clement. I think they'd be happy with a point there.
Yeah, I could certainly see that as well. That would certainly be enough for Norwich to keep enough momentum going forward at the start of this festive period. Anyway, finally, Rich, obviously I'm sure most people are aware, but you do some excellent work around Charlton, but also the London clubs in general. Tell us where you can find more of your work for those people wanting to see more of what you do.
Yeah, cheers. Well, the website's on Substack and it's South London Sport Charlton Athletic edition. And yeah, obviously, Twitter or X as well. I'm on there. Rich Cawley as well. So on both of those, but particularly Substacks where the Charlton content is. Yeah, that's where you can find me.
Yeah, and absolutely do that, because Rich does some fantastic work as well over there. Thank you very much for watching. A very Merry Christmas to you all, and we'll see you on Boxing Day for the start of a very busy and key festive period for Norwich City.